I think we are gonna be live in both at the same time. Record, good record. Yes. Welcome back, people from the internet, to another live session here. Ah, um, A-létheia and the Speak Up Club. Today, having some changes to the way we normally look, making it better, trying to make it better. Possibly, good, good. That's playing. Right. Trying to make it better in terms of how we're supposed to be, displaying a content that has that makes better sense sometimes. As you know, well, I mean, communication is not just simply one way, and we've been so far using just the first one, video essays that were available for us. Right now, we are trying to get a little bit more. So we're learning certain tricks along the way, and we hope that such changes don't find unwelcome eyes. All right. Okay, for tonight's topic, as you can see in the title, it says revenge, right? Revenge, payback, as theme that is recurring in manga and other media. Of course, we use manga as a reference because we read a lot of manga here. Not necessarily that is just the main idea of this space, but we tend to use this a lot as a great form to connect to many of people from the audience that tend to watch these videos. Um, I guess it's very practical for many different reasons because, believe it or not, content displayed in mangas is great, great when it comes to quality. Um, However, of course, it requires the time and dedication for you to investigate, check, dig out whatever is out there that you can take advantage of. So, yeah, not every manga that you come across is the best manga ever. In reality, no. You have to look a lot, look around a lot, dig in, check, basically try out sometimes stuff that possibly you wouldn't in normal circumstances, and be surprised because believe it or not, many of the best stories ever are found that way. Like someone just simply, trusting their gut and just checking. Of course, the whole algorithmic mentality that we have today, in which we all consider that things are supposed to happen the way we set them up to be, make us believe that we constantly have to be specifying the genre of things that we love, so we get some type of satisfaction for the things that we see. It was not always like that. This is a situation that has been only possible throughout, the advent of technology, the technology advances that we have on today. It was a time in which people did not have really access to set up the reality or the virtual reality of the world. I mean, if you wanted to have music, you had to have the type of devices that would allow you to get the type of music you wanted, and it was always limited on the quantity of music you had access to. So, of course, you had then a great thing with radio and TV that allow you a non-stop stream of content that, of course, had a lot of stuff that you didn't really care for, but you grew up watching and grew up accustomed to. And that was part of a reality of people that are, for example, from my generation, people that grew up with TV. But then, there's the newest generations of people, kids that don't watch TV anymore. They only play games and they only uh, watch videos. And among videos, obviously, you got anime, and you got manga in terms of online reading. And this is a situation that is the reality of today. And you believe that everything that you get to read is so cool because you get to choose according to the genre that you apparently are supposed to be fond of. I'm telling you, break that a possibility of restriction on yourself and read whatever comes across that seems interesting just because of the description, but not because of the genre in itself. The genre doesn't really define anything in reality. Well, yeah, I'm really sorry if I say that. I have to clarify. It defines certain specifics, as you know, we happens to know yaoi and yosei terms are really alarming, and you need to really pay attention to if you're not really careful watching that type of content and others. So of course, always take it with a grain of salt. Revenge, on the other hand, is not really a genre that you find within all the specifications of manga that you can read. You got the idea of, well, actually, you do now, depending on the web page, you have options that actually go on revenge as a theme. Because it is nonetheless a really strong theme as a narrative drive that you can see today, depending on how well people use it. Because in reality, it restricts a lot the type of story that you will tell if the drive for characters is revenge. It just goes one direction, and you know that there's really weird that you get to see stories that end up with the conclusion as being a positive one if the theme for the drive of the main character was revenge. Revenge simply just gets you to the chaotic reality of the world. And that's how it is. Making a little bit of research for this video, just trying to remember those lessons I used to receive back in my first years at university about the generalities that some of the main philosophers throughout the history of philosophy used to convey on, right? There were always different topics in which all major philosophers had something to say. And obviously, thinking about this, the majority of them, from Aristotle to Nietzsche, were definitely condemning revenge as a situation that it goes on the detriment of the perpetrator. If you are driven by revenge, you are not gonna end up well. Simply, that's how it works. Though I found some nuances in some authors, and the one that caught my attention the most for this particular video was the one from Hopes, in which he sort of justifies the idea that there are many different reasons or justifications for revenge for any individual. You cannot really simply just condemn it from the get go and saying that revenge is supposed to be, simply just bad. You can even say that there are things that happen to exist today that are justified from the very principle of revenge, which is, like the justice system. Even historically speaking, you got references as the Hammurabi Code, and basically refer to the idea that everything is supposed to be balanced up. If you commit harm to others, well, the same type of level of harm is supposed to be committed to you. So that is the same idea of payback. And you think about the idea of payback and you realize, okay, there must be some type of limit. Thank you. There must be some type of limit in terms of what is payable and what is not. Because it is impossible that if you are having a relationship with of any kind with any person, there are no moments of like reciprocal harm. You will from time to time offend that person, and that person from time to time will offend you. It is how it is. I mean, it's a reality of the world today that we tend to offend people because we are particular. We got our own differences in the way we see life. And sometimes those differences get like they butt in the way we say things or we express our thoughts. And as that happens, misunderstoods are often there, and misunderstood can only just produce harm, emotional harm. So, of course, that is from the unwilling perpetrator of the harm thing. But there is, of course, that one that is very, very willing to produce harm. In the reaction that we have over them, it's justifiable simply because of that level of morality that we are supposed to have in terms of how we conceive justice. But we know that we are not really just. We don't really judge everyone in the same way. We always discriminate. We can't really help it. That's how our brain is set to be. That's why we are proclived to a particular culture. We are proclived to a particular temporality. We just mentioned that at the beginning of the video with the full explanation on how we used to be and how people are right now in terms of our relationship with technology. We have a reality that differs vastly between individual and individual. And that reality mixes lots of different things at the moment in which a reaction is due because of a harm, being exposed to any type of harm. You have, of course, some type of predispositions that you can come to, predict, and because of characteristics that tend to be repetitive in individuals, that have been reported of throughout history of the world. You call them genotypes and phenotypes. You got type of personality forms and type of personality examples that are like patterns that we all have. And as such, we can predict that there might be like triggers that work precisely on this type of people one way and don't necessarily work in the same way with other type of people. Manga is great for the same principle that the Greek um, the Greek uh, tragedy was helpful for, because it represented how humans suffer in a way, certain things that are necessary for the audience to understand how how we can actually perceive morality. Revenge is the perfect thing to actually explore the morality of justice, because we justify our act of revenge or our act of justice on the position of making the other individual pay for the act committed, despite the fact that if the act committed represented some type of loss, no matter what type of punishment you induce that person, did you will receive any type of satisfaction at all. You will not, because things that are lost will not return. So revenge obeyed other principles beyond the sole principle of justice, as if you cannot really return what you lost because the other person made it, or got it from you, stole it from you, destroyed it from you. Well, the satisfaction you're supposed to get is trying to harm that person. That harming in itself is does not really obey any principle of justice. But if you think about this, doesn't it really happen with any justice system today? Like, I mean, if you go to jail for a crime committed, you go to jail to spend time in prison in an environment that does not really resemble any compensation towards society or towards the people you harm at all. I mean, it is living hell. That's what prison is. but it doesn't really compensate on anything. If you stole money, you're not really producing money. You're actually producing waste. That you're producing uh, a lot of debt that incurs in depending on the type of system and prison system that the government, the state of your country is, right? So you got that. You got the situation of um, uh, payback for, let's say, crimes that are horrendous, that definitely do not give us any type of option to the inaction of justice. Like if a person is caught, important that we understand this, if a person is caught doing some type of crime, we cannot really say that, okay, the horrendous crimes that you did, killing a person, for example, is one of the most horrendous crimes that you can tell today, till this date. That person that died will not return, and the type of punishment that you will make, or will make that person, the person you caught, suffer, will not really produce the satisfaction. But if you let it go, socially speaking, you're not really giving the best example. You're simply saying that if a person commits such a horrendous crime, well, nothing's going to happen. So society seems to be obligated, compelled to make individuals that may, acts like this and are caught. They need to be made example of. This example is supposed to teach the lesson that that is not supposed to be correct. In manga, you explore the whole position and situation that even if the system tries, even if there are really good intentions, bad stuff, bad, terrible stuff always end up happening. And there is a lot of justifications, as Thomas Hobbes said, for an individual's seek of revenge. Because there is no way that society is going to really give them the type of satisfaction that they require. That's what I love about Berserk. Berserk is a story that by the late Miura. We already have spoken about Berserk in the past in this channel, by the way. But this time around, we are centering in the theme, one of the themes, because it's not the only one, one of the themes of the story, one of the main ones. And that is, of course, what I was mentioning before, the topic of revenge. And why revenge? Well, we all know revenge is great for Berserk. Its main foundation or main drive for the main character to survive the consequences of the horrendous acts that Griffin, spoilers by the way, did to him and to his loved one, only loved one, surviving loved one. Oh, actually, considering Pippin too. But the most important surviving loved one for these main character, Guts. So again, Berserk is a story about the adventure or misadventures of Guts, a lonely warrior that grew up under really awful circumstances in a medieval pseudo fantastical world. And despite the fact that he proved to be courageous enough to, overcome every difficulty and, best himself in prowess and skill, he cannot really escape his fate of being overtaken by someone else's fate, someone whose fate was way stronger, way bigger than his, and that is the fate of Griffith, the person that was the owner of the behemoth. Then, obviously, his fate was to become a sacrifice, a living sacrifice to the gods of the underworld that will bestow him with the power to, be reborn as Femto and like a new god messiah in this medieval reality, and work as a type of bridge between the astral world and the real world. So I made a huge spoiler of the whole story up until now of what Berserk is supposed to be. But then going back to the drive of Berserk and everything that happened in the story in this manga, well, we can say that the story is heavy. Is if by genre, so you actually need to consider the type of uh, narrative warnings that you need to consider. Well, this one will definitely have adult in it and not shonen. So for those faint of heart, well, now you know. You have to be careful when once you get to read the story because it hits you very, very low in every passing of the progression of the story, and with particular driven purpose by Miura, the author, late author of the story. Too bad that he died before he could finish it. Story is still being written up until now, but by someone that inherited Miura's work, by the editing um, magazine where Berserk was printed, and of course, this happens to be, something that will definitely happen if your rights, the rights of your work, are not owned by you solely you, but instead by the people that provides you food. So, somehow, thanks to capitalism, we still have a little bit extra Berserk. Too bad is that we have Berserk, but not necessarily the way we want it to have Berserk. Okay. All right. What is other interesting thing about the story of Berserk? The fact that our protagonist, our main character, Guts, was betrayed by what who he thought was his best friend, leader, and owner of his own fate, Griffin, and being used as a father, as a sacrifice for Griffith to become Femto, because the whole army of the Hog, the mercenary army of the Hog, was glorious and needed to be glorious enough to become a really healthy and good sacrifice that was necessary for Femto to come across as this new Messiah that he needed to be. That was his fate, the fate of Griffin. There is a very obvious religious reference in terms of how um, fate, in terms of how destiny, freedom, conflict here, um, because we realized that there was no way God could escape his reality. Like the same way in which the Behemoth always seemed to find his way to its way to Griffin, back to Griffin, despite everything that happened to Griffin when he lost it. The same way gods managed to come back to the army of the hawk for being later on sacrificed to Griffith's ascension. And he survived somehow. He and Cascade survived both. Survived, but barely. Him losing his part of his arm and an eye, and his sanity, of course, and Gasca losing everything. everything. I mean, living basically an empty shell of herself and becoming a liability for everyone around her. Both of them being a liability because both of them were magnets to disaster, as sacrifices to these gods were supposed to be. Having survived the eclipse, do not really this situation did not really free them from the horrendous destiny that they were bound to because of Griffith. So why couldn't you justify God's intention of ridding himself of Griffith so he could actually buy himself freedom from this terrible destiny, dying the way his partners died, all as sacrifice, as cannon fodder, as proper meat to the monsters of the astral world. Some people say that Griffith didn't do anything wrong, and that's basically the topic that we discussed back then. It was in a Q&A, and that we discussed this idea. Um, Griffith did what he needed to do, as he had a will to foment. And this is the principle of what we had been speaking all along about the realities that every individual has of, you know, choosing what to say, choosing what to do in determined moments. And because, of course, you have intentions, you have goals to achieve. And by doing all those actions, you try to reach your goal as much as you can. But in the way of doing that, your will conflict with the will of other people. Sorry. Sometimes what you want, sorry, is what another person wants. Can you give me a bit of water, please? Thank you. It's been a long day, and as it has been a long day, my throat gets dry. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. So, well, going back to the topic, when we are confronted with the reality of this world, that this world limits us in every sense on our own wills, because our wills are determined on our own limitations. Some people, thank you, have, wow, incredible advantages of wider restrictions. Like, they don't have as many restrictions as other people. You can say they are freer than other people. But there are a lot of people that can really survive in the world on their own, or completely free from many different type of attachments that at the same time are shackles to that particularity of that individuality, or autonomy that they could have if they didn't have these bounds. So let's just simply just make the example. Right? You have a poor person and a rich person. The poor person is bound to the limitations of his economies, and because of this person's economy, will does not have access to many of the benefits of today's reality. Using technology, using let's say proper uh, eh, let's say healthy um, lifestyles of how they eat, and type of medicine and treatment, and many other different reasons, things that are really necessary for us to have a normal and good life. Well, these type of things are situations that can be limited depending on the conditions you are born. And if you're poor, well, you're gonna be limited on that. And if you are rich, on the other hand, you are limited on the conditions of what it represents for you and your group being rich, because a person is not rich on their own, never. A person is rich in a group. rich in a society that is bound to work in unison in order to maintain itself. Rich people have lots of money and they represent lots of money that is money, not physical coined money, currency, but money that is based on commodity, and commodity can be anything, even other people. Like there are industries, for example, that are mostly owned by a few group of people, but these industries are the sole livelihood of full, incredible quantities of people. Okay, so because people's livelihood depends on the conditions of that particular industry, you can say that their lives basically belong to the owners of or the controllers of that particular type of industry. Griffith represents this, represents that position that a person can have because he is born to hold these many different type of destinies. Okay, the baby is basically a symbolism to this. It's here a key that allows him to make the sacrifice. But in reality, it's just simply that. I mean, his wealth is not his own. Nobody is 100%, uh, let's say, 100%, how can I say this? Nobody's 100% controller, I would say, of their own destiny because your destiny is attached to your conditions, no matter where you're born, being poor or being rich. You are attached to things that you cannot really control. And as you can't, you will always find moments in your life in which your will conflict with your reality. And if you produce harm to yourself as trying to sort this conflict out, well, definitely you're gonna conflict with other people that happens to be in the path of your will. So as much as you have something that you want and you really strive for it and you make an effort to achieve it, well, the more you are susceptible of hitting the same path with another person. And as that happens, well, people, obviously, when that happens, you will hurt or get hurt, right? Michael, what's up, man? Big hug. So if you hurt someone and that person has the right to say, hey, I need payback because I feel morally wounded. I feel that there is an injustice being done here. And I feel that if I let this go, other people will try to abuse me the same way. And I can't stand for this. If that situation happens, you will be, in this case, at the very end of a possible terrible outcome. It is always important that we consider who do we harm? Who do we harm? Every time you harm a person, you are simply just accumulating terrible karma. One day, who knows, someone that you hurt might actually call you and confront you and tell you, hey, do you remember my name? Sort of the topic of it, that song from Radiohead, Paranoia and Drug. If you have bad deeds, oh, these bad deeds might actually hunt you back. That's karma. That's retribution. I cannot really say that this is controlled by a divine thing, but morally speaking, we all see it that way. We all see that retributions somehow are bestowed by like a higher being, something higher than us, something that can judge things from a more impartial perspective. And of course, religion will use this as a foundation for many of their stances about how justice is supposed to be held and empowered in their ideologies. No matter what religion you are, you always have some type of representation of what is supposed to be good, what is supposed to be bad, and how you're supposed to react against injustice of any kind. Well, not of any kind, of the ones that they in that religion think, right? Think that actually infringes with the principles of what they consider right. So that is what they consider injustice, right? For our individual countries' justice systems, that is also true. Depending on what the legal system of a particular country has, certain type of behaviors can lead you to become a type of criminal in their perception of your behavior. The way they judge you, they will judge you based on what they consider legal, what they consider acceptable, what they consider possible or not. If you are a person living in a country that is not yours, it is really important that you are aware of what is legal and what is not legal in the country that you're living, so you avoid situations like this because it's possible. Why have it? Of course, totally, absolutely possible that a person gets involved in a situation by not knowing, involved in a situation that is totally against their well-being, simply because this person was ignorant of the rules of the local place where this person is at a particular situation or moment. But what about all the people I'm referring to are people that are willingly harm another person or even a group of people, a country, etc., etc. But what about those people that willingly produce harm to you? They simply used you as a cannon fodder. They use you as a sacrifice pawn, a scapegoat for whatever will, for whatever whim they had. This is, I guess, the reason why stories that get the real specification of the drive of the main character, or at least some of the main characters, based on um, revenge, it seems to be such satisfying um, uh, path, way, and adventure. It is. Many stories that are based on the whole idea of revenge make the audience, especially the ones that are really good, well told, with great narrative, um, they make the audience on, like, not only sympathize with the main character, the one that is being driven by revenge, but also justify it, and even feel satisfaction when this character gets some of his revenge uh, complied when it happens. When the main character manages to kill the principal person or some of the group of people that were responsible for their plight, for their problem, for their issues, for what motivated them during the whole adventure. John Wick just recently finished as a franchise. Well, the main story. We've been told that apparently they're gonna be expanding the universe of John Wick in many other different movies, sorry. And well, that is that too. But the original attraction and appeal of John Wick was that simple premise, how the main character felt the need to enact his revenge on a group of people that he in the past considered allies because they simply overstepped their stance. And we all know that the justification for his rash, to say the least, reaction was simply because, he was angry. He was angry and frustrated with many of the things that came to be, all the different things he had to do in order for him to leave the organization for and to finally um, join bonds with his wife for her to end up dying in in an untimely way, and then after she did, well, obviously him apparently losing all sense of justification of life. So of course, when the stupid Russian kid killed his dog, he had all the justification to go all the way and to prove a point. To prove a point that it's not just a dog, as he said. It is a behavior that can be for yeah, like overseen, cannot be ignored. This has to be condoned. This has to be considered as a terrible thing. Here is the problematic part. We all connect to this idea and we all justify the reason for why then an action must be taken against the perpetrator of that particular wound. And that action needs to convey a similar type of value as the one that was lost in the particular wound. If that was the case of a life, well, we demand a life as an exchanging price. But really, can we? Should we? That life we're gonna take has nothing to do with the life we lost. If whom we lost was someone that we care for, that life has nothing to do with our beloved one. The person we lost will remain being, that person that we love in our heads. And I guess what the only thing that really justifies the intention of revenge is the fact that we do have a memory, a fresh memory of how that person that we loved died because of this other person. And because of that, you cannot really let it go until that person suffers something similar, a little bit of that pain that you went through. Well, at least you think the person you love went through when they lost their lives. It is all a fantasy. It cannot really be proven. It is a fantasy that we have, that we think that that person that we are enacting our revenge upon will suffer a little bit or a lot of the things that we believed our loved ones suffered. And that's the greatest thing, of course, of stories like Berserk, stories that like John Wick, and so many other different stories of revenge that you can actually come across if you are interested in the topic. I remember this classic one, Korean. I will show you guys. Uh, a Korean filmmaker that made a series of movies that are incredibly good. The series of movies are Sympathy, Not for the Devil, Sympathy for, sorry, sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. There you go. Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance is one of three movies, if I'm not 100% mistaken. These movies are made again by the same director. Uh, is John Kiduk, if I'm not mistaken. Let me Google up. Anyway, Mr. Vengeance. Okay, Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. Here we go, we go, we go. So, the director is Park Chan-wook. No, it was not John Yu, John Jin Ki-duk. It is Park Chan-wook, right? But the movies are just incredible. These three movies are based on those same principles that we all justify, in which why vengeance is supposed to be enacted. Like the individuals that get hurt in these movies really have a thing to come back for, and a payback to search. The only thing that will justify them being alive was that particular payback. You can see that the drive behind revenge is always self-destructive because, well, especially when we are referring to something that made us lose our perspective of life as it is, we balanced every action that we do with our own lives. Well, I'm kind of being exaggerated when I say we, because I've never really gotten a revenge myself. So I cannot really do that. I cannot really say that that's the way we do. But I can say that that's how I relate to the characters of movies and stories like the ones I just referred to. Because, yeah, these people have that situation, that um, thing of being uh, like we can understand the pain in the images, the pain that these people went through, and the pain that the people that made these acts have to suffer. In Berserk, we know that God's never really accomplishes any type of revenge. He never even gets close to touch Griffith. He simply toys around with Griffith's minions, but as we know, Griffith doesn't really give a damn about his minions anyway. So there is no real satisfaction in anything that gods do. He only needs to survive in the world as it happened to become after Griffith's ascension. So I guess it's more like salt to injury in reality. Him just trying to survive. And right now, in the last chapters, spoilers ahead, even physically losing his motivation, Casca, to Griffith because he kidnapped her. So we know that if there is any motivation, it lies basically in that primal principle of payback. The payback making the other person suffer what I suffer. And understanding that this payback is self justified. It's obviously self righteous as it is. You take it upon yourself to say that, morally speaking, you have the right to do what you are going to do. Morally speaking, you are bestowed with a power to go above the law and enact the action of killing. Of course, we mentioned at the beginning of the story that of this video, sorry, that this is uh, both not only about manga but also about other media. We have already mentioned John Wick, and we don't want to just stop there. We want to make some other references that are really important for um, the story, the topic that we're developing tonight. One of them is an incredible manga. If you guys are interested in, venture yourself in these um, very ambiguous subgenres of manga. This one is called manga Frisia. Right, Frisia. Is made by Hebron Furidia, right? No, Furidia is the title, sorry. Made by Jiro Matsumoto. And Matsumoto is a mangaka that has created many other different stories too. All of them are crazy. This one, possibly the craziest, tells a story about a guy who is crazy in a world in which the justice system basically collapsed as nation collapsed, and the nation apparently has to live in a constant um, survival of a perennial coup d'etat. So as the state is in this particular type of conflict between, the governor at the moment and the governor that's trying to kill the governor at the moment, justice system is established in a practical form in which the eye for an eye was put to be the norm again as the Wild Wild West. So the eye for an eye meant that if you killed someone, a relative survivor of that person had the right to enact revenge. Now, of course, it sounded from the very get go as barbaric, but society made it better by giving the option of people to use proxies as form to enact this particular law. So the proxies were basically assigned by the government as companies that subcontracted mercenaries. These mercenaries were trained shooters, people that had been involved in shooting, and these people will basically shoot out the victim. Sorry, not the victim, the perpetrator of your loss, enacting your revenge. And of course, the government, in the bias of being fair, give the right to the perpetrator, the person who's now is supposed to receive the act of revenge, to hire another gunman as a defensive way to confront the situation. So basically, in the shootout, once the shootout happened, because it had to happen, depending on fate, is basically how the outcome was supposed to be. If the person that needed revenge managed to kill the perpetrator, of course, that person was supposed to be supposed to feel served and satisfied. And the case rendered closed. On the other hand, if the person that was being hunted down as the perpetrator managed to kill the hunter, well, that person was supposed to be free, okay, from their case, because obviously revenge was enacted and the person proved that he could survive revenge. So imagine this world, okay, as it is. Everything that happened surrounding this situation, living by the people from Frisia, is crazy. It's simply just absolutely nuts. And the story just flows perfectly well, despite the fact that the main character, is a person that is constantly hallucinating and mixing reality with non-reality. It's incredible. It's just great because the reality in itself is hallucinating in itself. The idea of how it works, the whole principle of revenge, it is explored with the different episodes. As obviously we can see that it's not just simply one person that we get to see, one person's case that we get to see, as our main character is one of the enactors, one of the a higher gunman to enact revenge, and he, along the story, had to enact revenge for a series of people. The story is not that long, so it's not that we're gonna see this forever and ever. I strongly recommend you check this story if you want to perceive this from a perspective that those schizophrenic, in according to how Felix Guttari and Gaius Deleuze will appreciate this, well, they will say that it's a really valid perspective because you cannot necessarily see reality simply just by the reality, the way in which society apparently tells you or compels you to see as only one dimensional. Craziness is welcome to see how the world is, especially when the world is chaotic. So a situation like this about revenge can be considered a position that is justifiable simply by the fact that the world in which this situation happened does not really leave any level of satisfaction at all. Justice, as justice system that we know works, is not better when it comes to defining who is supposed to receive the punishment and who's supposed to get the satisfaction once the other one was punished. This is not something that society in today's view, it is really 100% capable of doing. However, we are millions of years ahead of the time in which it was an eye for an eye, and we can tell that it is way better now than the time of an eye for an eye, because an eye for an eye did not really solve the problem. We just have mentioned this a lot of different times. Another life will not really return your life, the life that you lost because someone killed that loved person for you. Okay, so reaching now a conclusion, we all know that uh, revenge, as we see it from every perspective of every type of narrative, at the very end, the stories tend to give you that notion that, yeah, you got your revenge, but at the end, you got involved in a self-destructive path that end up by destroying you completely, utterly you killing you. We can say that that's true in the majority of stories that we know of. We can say that in Berserk, there's not even the possibility of revenge, though it is being set up for that to be the new drive. Like, Casca is not around anymore, so, well, he can just simply go and try to kill Griffin, right? Maybe, maybe that's another way we can see it. But there are many different stories that will let us enjoy that situation, the situation of bonding a little bit with the person that has that need. But we need to really appreciate the fact that it is an advantageous position of us to have access to stories like this and, explore our brains in how we conceive the moral principles behind an action, like the action that happened to wound the protagonist that yeah, is mainly driven by revenge. So we need to be critical, not simply just enjoy the cuts that that does every time that he kills one of the apostles of Griffith. Not just that, there's this story that I really enjoy though it does exactly the same thing I'm telling you not to enjoy so much. The story is called a Rooftop Sword Master. Let me show you guys. Rooftop Sword Master. This is a manhwa. This is a crazy story, obviously. If the principle of the story is revenge, it's definitely crazy. And in this story, we see that, oh, Camilo, hello, welcome. In this story, we see that the protagonist's drive is mostly revenge. And this protagonist goes to extremes that are just simply crazy. It's just impossible. He managed to kill almost everyone that he sets to kill, and whomever supports them. Okay, and the story shows you how gruesome revenge is supposed to be. You kill those that are involved with the people that you want to kill. Otherwise, you will not really get the proper satisfaction because then again, if we think about justice, the person that we want revenge from mainly is a person that killed or made the person that you loved disappear. And as that happens, you want satisfaction for that life you lost. This is the crazy thing that that person will have people that will depend on them too. So why not using the same principle of if that person killed one person you care for, kill them one person you care, so well, one person that person cares for. That is exactly the principle. And that in itself is so terrible, right? Sounds awful. But that's the truth. That's reality that we're seeing when we analyze the situation of revenge. So, conclusion. I invite all the people that are seeing this video right now, or will see this video later, enjoy your violent, revengeful story. Enjoy it thoroughly. But mostly consider that there is a value to a story like this. And the value is not simply just the fact that, yeah, if you enact your revenge, you'll end up dying too, because that happens too. You end up becoming something you hate. You end up in a paradox. But at the same time, you will explore the feelings of all the people involved. And you will understand that despite the fact that there are some people that justify revenge, there are situations and there are situations. We all are sitting behind the morality line the moment in which we judge something based on this, based on repercussion and retribution of big harm done. We see a person that abuses of an individual that we don't want this individual to suffer much. Someone abusing of a kid, abusing of their wives or any girl, someone harming animals, someone harming the kids. All these people that are horrendous, that do the worst deeds possible. For these people, we want the worst type of suffering. If, especially, there are fantasy characters. They are not real people. They are part of a narrative. When they are part of a narrative, they do obey the intention of the author in exploring the situation in which it happens, what entails the idea of revenge. So that means that if you get involved one day if you get involved, you get somehow cornered, driven by a situation in which the consequence is your reaction, and your reaction is revenge. The more this information you have for you, the more your brain, or the better, in fact, your brain will begin to sort out among possibilities. And in the sorting out among possibilities, I will surely think that I don't think that you will be a person that is easily driven to violence. Those people that read a lot of violent stuff or watch a lot of different violent stuff are not necessarily the most violent people. Not really, not by statistics. So that's it. That's basically, in a nutshell, the whole information that we have for you guys tonight. How we are connecting the theme developed in Berserk and in all the other stories that we mentioned before to the idea of revenge, and not from the principle uh, of condemning revenge or condoning revenge or justifying it. Not really. We are exploring it from the perspective of people that actually want to think about an issue that has not many easy solutions. A lot of different aristas, a lot of different ways in which you will definitely say, all right, I don't think it is this way. However, I go for this way instead of this way. Or even, I think it is this way, but I would prefer to go for this way. That is a valid situation that is happening today a lot. We here in A-létheia, we care and are concerned mostly for the truth. So we try to leave most of our own opinions or biases out completely of the topics that we develop. Of course, the topics that we develop here are topics that we care for, but biases as like, what exactly is it that I think people should do or not do, we don't do that here. We try to evaluate the perspective of someone that is sensible enough to think about issues like this. I want to see if people, our audience, interested in doing that, interested in like um, helping their brains to react in or under the most difficult academic no, narrative conditions. Okay, so that's mainly what we did today. We did an exercise to actually convey this particular difficult topic through the representations of different media references that we mentioned. Mainly Berserk, but of course we did mention other stories such as um, Rooftop Swordsman, John Wick, and Frisia. Okay. Well, people, remember, disclaimer time. This is a space that we use to offer the benefit for all the people that have been or are students of ours at A-létheia as examples of how to put in practice many of the different things that we use in class, and of course that you still need to correct. We put that in practice in class in these sessions, so you guys have the best reference possible. So that was one of the motivations that we had this space for. But of course, then there are many other different ways that we use this space for. One is, of course, promotion. So we are trying to promote ourselves. So please, if you have the willingness to help us, We would definitely appreciate a like, a subscribe in either YouTube or Instagram. Follow us here, leave us a message. Remember, people, that A-létheia is a language consultancy agency that works mainly on helping, aiding people in language acquisition, in the process of ESL, both English and Spanish. So if you're interested in getting your skills improved up to the way for a certification, EFR certification, or TOEFL or IELTS certification, we help you with that too. Leave us a comment, leave us a contact, and we will definitely hit you back. Okay. For all the others, if you're a user of our services, make sure that you are tuning the next one that we have in next week. It's gonna be very interesting as well. All right. Well, that's it for tonight, people. Thank you for those of you that attended tonight and enjoyed part of the conversation. Okay. Well, my greatest hugs to all the people from the internet. First, Instagram. No, here. Yes. And now on YouTube. Thank you, people.